Strange times we live in, isn't it? I mean, first and foremost, I got to tell you, this. I don't know about you. I want to know what you think, but I don't know about you. But this season's gone really fast. It's really weird, at least for me. It feels like, I mean, we are what, 5 days out of Christmas, 4 days out of Christmas. It caught me. And I say that sometimes as I get older, I'm like, it caught me. Well, this time it really did. And I was thinking about that today of why I normally feel that between Thanksgiving and Christmas, I have more time to enjoy the holidays. But this year I didn't. And it occurred to me that Thanksgiving was late this year. And the number of days between Thanksgiving and Christmas has been shortened. So it just feels like it's flown by. Does it feel like that to you? Really weird. Thanksgiving was the 28th of November. 2 days later was the last day in November. Usually Thanksgiving is a little earlier. It's usually the 23rd to 24th. Just seems really weird that it was the 28th and then, basically 3 full weeks till Christmas. It just, I don't know, maybe it's my age, but it just feels like it's gone fast. The name's Jeff. It's Westside Jeff in for Chris Krok. Chris is back on January 2nd. I think he's in next week filling in for Casey, I think. So I'm filling in for Chris right now. He'll be back on January 2nd. Story is simple. I was born and raised up in Columbus, Ohio, and never really trained to be a professional radio guy, and I certainly don't have the radio voice. I'm just a regular guy like you. And when I worked in radio up in Ohio for many years, and it was a talk radio station there. Remember talking to the program director and joking with him, you got to put me on the air sometime. And he said, what would you talk about? And we used to yip-yap back and forth and just chat. And I happened to be at the right place in the right time when some events went down and he was in a position where he needed somebody to cover a couple hours. I said, I'll do it. He said, okay, what do you talk about? And I told him, and he said, well, what if you get no calls? I said, Mike, how many times I've been in your office? And we chatted for a while, and finally he said, okay, get out of here. You're bugging me. I got to get back to work. And there was an immediate silence. It seemed like about a minute, but it was probably 5 seconds. He said, okay, you're on. And I was like, uh-oh, what did I just talk myself into? And I went from having confidence and being bold and a little cocky to all of a sudden, my butt was puckering. And I ran to the bathroom a lot. And so he and I talked it through. And he comforted me a little bit and said, okay, you're going to go in. Here's what we're going to do. I said, hey, I know how to play radio. So y'all punch your buttons and do that thing. I can talk. And so we tried it. And after that was all over, and a couple months later, I said to him, what would happen if that didn't work? He said, it would have been a failed experiment. And the rest is history. So after the first show, I remember him calling me on my cell phone on the way home and said, dude, that was great. You missed your calling in life. That was really good. And I'm like, okay, you're just saying that. He's like, no, you did great. It's the first time you've ever done talk radio. And I'm like, yeah. And so we talked it through, and it was like a drug to me, I mean, it was like caffeine. It was like somebody who smokes a cigarette. You can't put it down. What's that old line? Lay's potato chip. You eat one, you can't put it down. Well, I couldn't put it down. So the next week I went into his office, talked to him about it, and said, man, I just got the bug. I want to do more, and I'll do overnights. I'll go from 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. on the little AM station up in Ohio. And he started laughing. I said, what are you laughing at? He said, I knew you'd say that. He said, listen, you graduated from the little thing. You're on the big stick. And started using me as a fill-in guy, and the rest is history. So that's kind of how I got in the radio. And so he said, what name are you going to use? And I'm like, I don't, my real name is a stupid name. I didn't want to get there because, quite honestly, I didn't want to be famous, and I don't, I want to be anonymous when I'm out and about. On the radio, I'm fine with being Jeff, but when I'm out and about, I don't want to be in restaurants or something, and because I see it all the time with people who are famous, they can't go out in public. I don't want that. So I said, I don't know, what do I use? He said, well, you're from the West Side, and you always told me that when you grew up, there were a bunch of Jeffs out on the West Side, so people just called you West Side because you were such a hill rat, such a hill rat, a hillbilly, kind of hill rat. So he said, I kind of like West Side Jeff, and the rest is history. So that's what I do. I just give you common sense opinion on current events, get a chance to sit here and follow the news, read it, watch it, many channels. I find myself analyzing it, come up with opinion, and get a chance to give you my opinion on what's happening today. That's kind of my story. And let's start with that. What happened today? Well, it's really odd that we're in a time. I always tell people you got to really be cognizant and watch out for what I call three things you got to watch for. I call it the Friday afternoon news dump. If you want to, any company, think about a company that lays people off. Think about a company that wants to break bad news. Think about the government that wants to break bad news. When someone wants to bury a story, they drop it on a Friday afternoon at about 3 o'clock. And the reason they do that is because coming in the weekend, our attention span towards what we're consuming in media isn't what it normally is. It's throughout the week. We're a little more attuned to media stories and things in the news throughout the week as opposed to on a Friday night, a Saturday, a Sunday. So 3 o'clock on Friday is a great time to dump stuff. So I'm always telling you, you've always got to watch the news on Friday night and Saturday, because if somebody wants to drop a bad story and they want to bury it, they do it on Friday at about 3 o'clock. You want to bury it, that's when you bury it. The second thing you got to watch out within the news cycle is if you really want to bury it, you bury it on a holiday week or holiday weekend. So we're hitting the daily double today because it's Friday, it's the end of the day, and it's a holiday weekend because Christmas is coming up on Tuesday or Wednesday. And then if you really want the hat trick, you do it at a time when school is coming to a close and parents are really focused on getting their kids out of school and vacation season and things like that. We've got the triple whammy today. We got the triple burner. We got the hat trick. It's a grand slam of events because it's a Friday. It's late in the day on Friday. It's a day when kids are getting out of school across the country, so your kids are home and you're focused on getting their stuff out of the school and getting ready for a couple weeks break from that. It's a vacation season because it's the holidays, and it's Christmas. So if there's news you want to drop, today's the day to do it because ain't nobody going to pay attention to it. So today, what happens? Well, the budget battle goes on, and just a few just an hour or so ago, the House of Representatives approved the revised plan to avert a government shutdown. So it's a weird time because and what makes it really weird right now is we've got a president in Joe Biden who's in the White House. At least I think he's president, right? Isn't he? I think. I haven't seen him. Haven't heard from him. A lot of things going on in the news the last several weeks. Haven't heard from him. And our vice president, still there's people in this country who don't know who it is. They don't know who the VP is. Well, we haven't seen her since she lost the election. And it's just strange that we have somebody in the leadership position of the White House who has dementia. My opinion is it's Alzheimer's. I'm sorry, but the guy just doesn't know what day it is and what's going on. He's not aware. And you got her who's checked out because she lost the election and she's getting blamed for everything. So everybody's blaming everybody. And Joe doesn't want to do anything other than what he calls what I would call Trump-proof his agenda, which we'll talk about in the next segment after I hit a break at about 4 minutes or 3 minutes. And you got the president-elect, who was the last president before Joe Biden, so Donald Trump. And if I didn't know better, you'd think Trump was a president. Really weird. So for 11 months ago, you and I were talking. And I said to you, hey, here's what's going to happen at the end of the year, okay? Joe Biden, who's our president now, and we knew he was loony then, he's going to run for re-election, but he's going to blow up in the middle of the summer. So they're going to throw him out and put her in. Yeah, I know Everybody in the world told me no way that was going to happen. No way Kamala was going to be the one to run for office. And I said, yeah, I don't know if it's her or someone else, but it was her. And in the meantime, through all this, Donald Trump, the previous president, had 2 attempts on his life. One of them, he got shot in the ear. And Kamala's going to lose it. And Joe's going to do everything he can to protect his legacy. And Hunter's going to get pardoned along with a lot of other folks. Man, you couldn't have written a script like this. When we talk about movies, this is movie season. This is bigger and better than any movie you could imagine, right? It's a strange year. Well, today's that Friday afternoon news dump. The House approved a budget. It now sits with the Senate. They're discussing it now. And if that doesn't go down, there's a government shutdown come up at midnight tonight. It's going to be interesting to see what happens, and we'll keep our eyes on that. Charlie's my producer tonight, Charlie Williams. He's my partner in crime. When you call in, you'll talk to Charlie, and Charlie and I talk throughout the show. And in the newsroom, I've got my buddy Sean Allen. Sean will keep us up to speed as breaking news goes down. So we got you covered. I'm going to give you common sense opinion all night long. Charlie's going to help me orchestrate some phone calls and some content. And my man Sean's going to be there with the news. Just a strange time. I want to get into what that looks like with the budget and where that stands as of 30 minutes ago in about 3 minutes. My name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. In for Chris Krok on News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP. I was with a buddy of mine yesterday, a client that I have known a long time and kind of work with in my day job. And it's a young guy. Love him to death. My buddy Jordan. He's probably, Jordan's I think 28 years old. And he was showing me this new tool he uses associated with Twitter, now called X. It's some special AI tool called Krok or something like that. I don't use it. He pays a fee for it. And he was telling me, he was geeked up about it, telling me how great it was. And it's a tool that you could tell it to do something, and it would do something. So, for example, he said, draw me a picture of Einstein using XYZ paintbrush and only these colors, and show me making it happen. And it pulled it up, and it did it. And so he was asking his stupid things, and his buddy Josh was sitting next to him, and Josh was too. And they looked up and said, "Hey, Jeff, what do you want this thing to do?" And I, for the heck of it, I said, "You know what I want? If you're going to use AI, you know what? If AI is that great, artificial intelligence, then tell me what the winning lottery tickets are going to be for the Mega Millions tomorrow night, meaning tonight, Friday night." So he asked that question, and the AI tool came up and gave him the audio and said, it read it out loud. It said, the Mega is pulled, blah, 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 blah. So it didn't give a number. So I said, see, doesn't work. He said, no, hold on, let me check this out. So he started thinking about it. He said, okay. So he asked this AI tool, he said, okay, if you were to play the Mega Millions, because it's like $800 million, I think, tonight. If you were to play the Mega Millions, and you were to select numbers that would most likely win, what would they be? And by God, it popped up some numbers. So we all laughed about it. And at that point, he said, "You got to play him." And I'm like, "I really don't play the lottery. Every now and then I do." He's like, "Got to play him." He said, "How are you going to feel on next week if these things hit?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you just got me." So I took a picture of it. Wrote down the numbers. I actually took a picture of my phone, and for the heck of it, I went to the store today and bought a lottery ticket for those numbers. I'm not going to tell you the numbers. I'm just going to tell you that if I hit, you might know. You have to listen in Monday night. I'll be here Monday night, because even if I hit, I'll be on Monday night. I'll be flaunting it, and if I don't hit, I'll tell you that too. It's funny. I've got a cousin that actually was part of a group that hit $230 million, kind of. And that was years ago. And that story's across the web, too. I'll tell you that story a little bit later, probably in the next hour. My name's Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. And for Chris Krok, Chris is back on January 2nd. So I was telling you, you got to be concerned about days like today, because what happens is you've got to be, I call it the Friday afternoon news dump. Companies like to break bad news. They actually don't like to break bad news, but when they do, there are times to do it that are better than others. And the same with government. So if you're gonna drop some bad news, you have to figure out when is the best time to drop it. Like, for example, if you're a company and you want to drop bad news, like you're laying a lot of people off, like a big broadcaster, not this company, but a different company, they do it on election day or the day before election day. Why? Because the biggest story going on the day of election day and after is the election, right? So if you want to bury a story, you do it on a big day. Well, today's a big day because A, it's a Friday. That's number one. Number two, it's a Friday going into a holiday weekend. Number three, it's a Friday where school is letting out for the holidays. Number four, it's a time where people take a lot of vacation time and they actually travel to vacation sites and spend time with family. And boy, you add to it is one of the big stories going on across the country is college football playoffs. We've never had this before, college football playoffs. This is the first time ever in the history of our country we've had college football playoffs. Sports fans have been asking for it. Say, hey, you got the NFL postseason that goes into a Super Bowl. You got March Madness in college basketball. Give me playoffs. Well, they developed the playoffs, and they start tonight with Indiana and Notre Dame. So if there's a time-buried story, it's today. So the story today is the House approves a revised plan to avert government shutdown. And now it sits with the Senate. The Senate's discussing it tonight. And they've got till midnight to come up with a plan to send it to Joe Biden, who is our current president, to sign it. Otherwise, there'll be government shutdown at midnight. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. My man Sean Allen in the newsroom is going to keep us up to speed on breaking news on that. So he's going to have news top of the hour and bottom of the hour with updates throughout the night. So make sure you continue to keep plugged in here because as it happens, we're going to cover it. Sean will be all over it. We'll tell you what's going on. But the Republican-led House of Representatives approved the revised legislation to avert a government shutdown. That was just about an hour or so ago. And it provides more than $100 billion in disaster and farm aid, sending the measure to the Senate just hours ahead of that midnight deadline. And lawmakers voted tonight, 366 in favor of, 34 against, and one voted present, which means not casting a vote. So it was well above the 2/3 threshold needed under special fast-track procedures. Now, the bill, which was House Speaker Mike Johnson's third attempt this week, it drew significant Democratic support this time, despite continued anger that an earlier bipartisan agreement was killed. The proposal approved tonight would extend government funding until March 14th, while also providing more than $100 billion in disaster relief and $10 billion economic aid for farmers. The bill also includes a one-year extension of the Farm Bill and the cornerstone of the U.S. Food and Agriculture Policy. I got to hit bottom of the hour news here in just a second. On the other side of that, I want to talk a little more about this and the impact and what happens. And I find it interesting that the Republicans added $100 billion in disaster relief on the heels of what happened with that big storm that went through the middle of the country and absolutely devastated North Carolina. Devastated North Carolina and Tennessee. There's still people there trying to pull themselves out of it. And by the way, part of the problem there is FEMA went in there to help them. And some FEMA people were told, hey, if they get a Trump sign in the yard, don't help them. Make sure we help them last, which is wrong. So interesting stories going on. We'll talk about this revised plan to avert government shutdown after this bottom of the hour news. It comes up in 2 minutes. And right after that, we'll be back to talk about it. My name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. And for Chris Krok on News Talk 820 WBAP. Westside Jeff and for Chris Krok. Chris will be back on January 2nd. It's vacation season here at the station, so you get part-time guys like me filling in and move things around because our big-time superstars, Ernie's gonna be taking a couple weeks off. A lot of guys taking some time off, so it gives me a chance to hear and fill in and just My shtick is simple. I just give you common sense opinion on current events, and that's really what's missing today is common sense. And thank God for President Trump coming back in, because there's a common sense. A lot of things I feel passionate about. I love talking about current events in the news. Today's biggest news story is the House passing a continuing resolution. I hate the word continuing resolution because I like to think that leadership is about making tough decisions, and I think it requires setting a full line budget, not just a continuing resolution budget, and continuing something we did before. Something else I feel strongly about, was talking last night a lot about, and I'll continue to beat that drum, and that is education. I grew up in an impoverished neighborhood back in Ohio in the 80s. I didn't grow up with a lot of money, but I didn't know I was poor. And my dad was a plumber, and yeah, I know what you're thinking. Plumbers make a lot of money. Not back then. They didn't. And he was a union guy, and he'd work on a job for 12, 16 months, and he'd get tapped. And they'd say, hey, go sit the unemployment line for 18 months. And that just tore him apart. And it was a tough time. So I grew up in an era of some poverty, and we qualified for food stamps and some government assistance, but my dad was too damn proud to take it, so we never did. And I can tell you firsthand, the best way to help solve poverty, the best opportunity of lifting people up out of poverty is not government assistance. It's not welfare. It's not free stuff. It's not free. It's education. You got to educate our kids. We got to educate America. We got to give them an education. As somebody once said to me, a phrase I heard a long time ago, you give a man a fish, he eats for a day. You teach a man to fish, he eats for a lifetime. Education is about teaching a man to fish. Let's give them the skills to educate themselves and to better themselves and to grow and provide for themselves, as opposed to somebody providing it for them, which is why this budget process is important today. 800-288-WBAP. That's 800-288-WBAP is the number if you want to weigh in. I'm also across social media at Westside Jeff. Let's talk to Ray from Farmersville. Ray, thanks for calling. You're on with Jeff. You're Farmersville. You're up there by Lake Levon, aren't you? Isn't that where that is?
Yeah, I'm on 380. Just trying to get home.
On your way home? You're on your way home from work or on your way home from Christmas shopping?
Just like grocery shopping. I did my Christmas shopping earlier. But I heard your show last night. I've been teaching 16 years, 2 different states, Florida. I'm with you. I grew up dirt poor, didn't even know I was poor until I went to a friend's house, saw food in the fridge. I was like, oh, that's what goes in there. I teach. When
I opened the fridge like you, all I saw was a lot of ground beef.
Yeah, I mean, and raviolis and beefaroni. I mean, I know those days.
And we liked it.
Try and tell these kids. Oh, yeah, we liked it because that's what we had.
Didn't know better.
We didn't know any better.
So you're currently a teacher, or?
Yeah, I currently teach. I teach government economics at all levels, dual credit down to special ed. I teach U.S. history. I got one of the best streaks in the history of the state. 10 years, no kids have failed at all. And I get, the high accommodations, and I deal with Title I kids where they tell me that they can't learn. I get them to learn.
Good for you.
I stress about it. I try and work my craft, but I'll tell you this. The problem in our education system, besides a multitude of things, is the state keeps giving schools money to fail. And that's the problem.
Explain that to me.
I'll explain it to you this way. I am the GOAT of all time. Like, I could tell you, until they started doing this, I had phone calls and will you work for our district? Will you work for our district? I held up one district for 5 years on my back with my 100% pass rate. And then all of a sudden the state started giving money for failure. And then if I was looking for a job, I couldn't find a job because everybody's like, we don't want you because you're going to mess up our money. I was like, what are you talking about? So I used to work the summer where I would help the kids who failed pass, like my students did during the year. all of a sudden they said, well, if you're going to work summer school, you have and do EOC, end of course exam prep, you have to do English, not U.S. history. I was like, so you want the kids to fail again? There's more money in failure than there is in success.
Did somebody actually tell you that?
Yeah.
Wouldn't surprise me.
And I sat there going, but that goes against what we're supposed to be doing. And it's just criminal to the point where 2/3 of our graduating seniors are either functional illiterates or illiterate. How did they get there? We have, in this current school I'm in, 9% of the senior class could pass the state entrance exam, the TSI. 9%, not 99, 9%. And we're not doing anything because of this failure money that they get. And I work in a multiple high school district. I started to notice after my second one, wait a minute, there's one or two schools that they praise above all, and then there's the other two that are struggling, and they're meant to fail to get that money from the state, and then they filter it to the two schools that they like. And it's a criminal enterprise. And it's making it hard for a guy like me who's principled to continue to want to do my job that I believe God asked me to do, because I was working marketing, making big money, and I got a call. And I'll be honest with you, I've done it for 16 years, from Florida, my home state, to Texas, and I love it. I love my students, but it's just harder and harder to do my job when this is what I come to work, and I'm literally harassed. I'm overly monitored. I've been in the principal's office more times than most kids this year.
And what do you teach again?
I teach government, econ, and U.S. I mean, it's just sad. They told me I couldn't even talk about the election this year. I'm like, this is the most exciting thing in government, and I can't talk about it?
It's got to be tough to be a good conservative like you are, and supposedly supposed to teach government, but it goes completely against the liberal left, critical race thinking type teachers unions and what they want you to teach. So you're talking about an oxymoron there, aren't you?
Oh, yeah, completely. And I'll give you a good example of it. I had a kid from Venezuela, and we were talking about the mixed economies and stuff like that. And I said, it's a shame what happened to your country. It had the third highest GDP on this side of the hemisphere, and the third best, GDP overall in the economy. And now it's in, people are eating out of garbage trucks. And he was so shocked that I knew about his country. I had his full attention. Well, another student didn't like what I had to say about Venezuela, which is all true in facts. And so the principal calls me in, and I had to have a 2-hour meeting where they tried to browbeat me about it. And I'm like, but I didn't say anything that wasn't true. And it just was like constantly these kind of things where I'm tiptoeing around eggshells, and their feelings, or trying to, say things in a way that doesn't seem to offend anybody. It's like making my job more and more impossible to teach. It's bad enough that they can barely comprehend or critically think. It's bad enough they can't write a lick. It's just making it hard. And
you're a bad teacher, Ray. You went off the reservation. You went against the school's narrative, man.
Oh, well, I've been doing that since day one.
Keep doing it.
And it's just like, I'll just be honest, it's hard to keep doing it because you just keep getting, it's like, you just don't want to be sitting in the principal's office. I didn't get that much when I was in high school myself. It's just really tiresome. But I'll tell you,
you've been in the principal's office more as a teacher than you were as a student.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. Ray, thank you for what you do. Thank you for calling, and I appreciate the comment on that. Education is something I feel strongly about, and I'll continue talking about it. It truly is our best opportunity to pull people up out of poverty. And it's what I said, I believe, and we talked a little bit about last night, is our educational system needs a fundamental reboot. Many schools, especially in our larger districts, are in crisis mode. And I'm going to continue talking about that because there's so many parents that don't know that. So many parents, including my age. I'm 64 years old. My kids have been out of school now, out of high school, about 10 years. And there's a lot of parents that don't know what's really going on in schools. I took a call from a parent last night, said, you know what? Go to your local school system and walk through the hallways and just get an idea what's on. Look at what's on the walls and just get a vibe of what's in the building, and it'll surprise the hell out of you, and you won't like it. I've been in my schools. I spent some time there, and I totally agree with that. Ray, thanks for calling. I appreciate it. I get a quick break on the other side. I want to continue the conversation about the Friday afternoon news dump and what happened today as it relates to the budget and where it goes from here. And it ties back to education because I think the Republicans, I think the Trump administration, I think our Congress, they've got to go out and educate people and tell them what they're doing and why they're doing it. Superstar presidents, superstar leaders sell their message to their constituents. You and I are the constituents. Our leaders and future leaders, have got to get out there and sell the message. We can't just have talk radio be the talking points and guys like Ray who teach. We need them in the media out there, and that includes out there at podcasts, getting on the Joe Rogan show, some of the shows, some of the programs that helped Trump get elected. Got to do that. I'll tell you what that looks like. I'll tell you what it stands for and tell you what happens next in about 3.5 minutes. My name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff in for Chris Krok on News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP. So Jeff is the name, back in for Chris Krok till January 2nd. Chris will be back then. I get a chance to sit here and just give you a common sense opinion on current events. If you want to weigh in, like Ray just did, we talked a lot about education last night, and I'll continue that conversation as we move forward through the show tonight and other nights. The number is 800-288-9227, 800-288-WBAP. You can also hit me up across social media at Westside Jeff. Top of the hour news comes up about 8 minutes. On the other side of it, I'm going to talk a little bit about what Joe Biden did today in the last couple of days to what I call Trump-proof his White House and his agenda. Trump-proofing it. Yeah, that's what he's doing. I'll tell you more about that in about 12 minutes. Today, the House of Representatives, just about an hour or so ago, approved a revised plan to avert a government shutdown. And now it goes to the Senate. Chuck Schumer said that he's going to come out and do a press conference. Something tells me he's not going to do it in the next hour and a half because you have the college football playoff game going tonight. It's the very first time in college football we've had an actual playoff game. You never had it, right? People have always said, I want more. You got March Madness. You got the World Series in baseball. The NBA has the NBA Finals. The NHL has the Stanley Cup. College basketball has the March Madness program. Hell, every other sport and every other entity has some kind of a postseason. We've never really had in college football postseason, other than the stupid bowl games, the 164 or 364 bowl games that are meaningless. Well, finally, college athletics started getting stuff together and put together a college football playoff season, and it kicks off tonight. It's the first time ever. Tonight's game is Indiana at Notre Dame. So it's up in really, really cold weather. Got 3 of those games tomorrow, too. It's going to be exciting. Well, I don't suspect that Schumer will come out during that unless he wants to bury the news, which wouldn't surprise me because that's what you got to watch for. I always tell you got to watch out for those, what I call Friday afternoon news dumps. Because when companies and governments want to break bad news, they do it on Friday afternoons. If you really want to get it bad, you really want to bury it, you do it on a Friday afternoon of a holiday weekend at a time when school's just let out and people are about ready to vacation. Oh, by the way, you do it during the college football playoff game. So I got my eyes on it. My man Sean Allen in the newsroom will keep me up to speed, and we're talking about it. he'll drop me a note and say, hey, Jeff, I got a big story coming up. I'll keep you posted on that. In the meantime, you can weigh in at 800-288-WBAP. My man Charlie Williams will take the call and put you on the air and we'll have a conversation. So the House passed the budget today. Third chance to getting it done. Yesterday, Texas Congressman Chip Roy was very adamant and very against what was going on. It wasn't that he was against Trump. It wasn't that he was against the plan. He said, I don't want to give someone a blank check to increase the federal deficit. I agree with Chip Roy on that. I totally agree. I understand what Trump's trying to do. He wants a blank check so that he can get, you know what it is? What Trump wants is good cop, bad cop. He wants the Congress to be the bad cop to increase the ceiling right now, while the Democrats control the Senate and the White House. So he wants it on Joe Biden's watch, so that on January 3rd, when the new Congress takes over and we have the Republican-led House by 4-5 seats, and then we get the Senate and take that over by 3 or 4 seats, and then he takes over in January, late January, and we've got a clean sweep with those 3, they can move forward. So Trump wants the Democrats to take the fall, and they want an increase in the debt ceiling now while Joe Biden's in office. I still say, I understand what that's all about. I still say I have to balance my budget, and I expect my government to do the same. I don't care who's in charge, Republicans or Democrats. I want a balanced budget. Start being fiscally responsible. That's what I wanted. That's what I voted for. So GOP lawmakers pledged to raise the debt ceiling and cut spending next year, but not vote on it now. So President-elect Donald Trump today had demanded this in recent days, that lawmakers vote to raise the borrowing cap before he takes office. Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, said there's a unanimous agreement in the room that we need to move forward. We will not have a government shutdown, he said. The legislation also needs to be approved by the Democratic-controlled Senate and be signed into law by President Biden. It wasn't immediately known how quickly the Senate would act. My 2 cents worth is this. I'm not trying to be flip on this. I don't think Joe Biden stays up till midnight. I don't see Joe Biden staying up tonight till midnight. He can't.